Somebody asked the question, who were the Tuskegee Airmen? And my immediate response it was, well, they were just a bunch of good old red-blooded American boys who did what they had to do in the time they had to do it, and they did it well.
The Tuskegee Airmen were an all-black fighter squadron, the 332nd Fighter Group actually, who did bomber escort, which meant they put their life at jeopardy to make sure that the B-52 bombers got home safe.
They offered me the opportunity to be a pilot. You know, I like to look back. When I was a young man, I looked back and I thought about the Buffalo Soldiers, and I tried to amplify the things that they had done. And hopefully that the young persons that are coming behind now will try to amplify the things that I've accomplished.
Well, it's important for the younger generation to know, first of all, the history of the past, but mainly that in order to overcome obstacles, you have to be excellent. The Tuskegee Airmen stands for excellence. We were people who were in college, we were leaders of our group, we were athletes, we were valedictorians.
And it's men like this that help to provide the freedoms that we enjoy and pave the way for specifically African American men to do their part in the war effort, not just World War II, but all the major war efforts that America has been involved in. And I just have the opportunity now to say thank you. Thank you for your service, sir, and your devotion to your country. And
for 92 years, and I hope 92 more.
92 years, that's what I'm saying.
Our project involves what we're calling now the Fallen 66. It has to do with those Tuskegee Airmen pilots that were killed. We now find that we might have our numbers wrong, that there might be many others. And, there are some crew people that are involved. But we feel that families have not gotten closure. Those of us who don't know that they died need to understand it.
Right.
And that's the case in any war. There's no two ways about that. But through your efforts and the efforts of a lot of other people, the Tuskegee Airmen in the last 20 years have become more known. I had a conversation with some of the older airmen and asked that specific question, and they are proud of the fact that in this last couple of decades, it's been more pronounced. What are your thoughts about the Fallen 66?
Well, I mean, it's a fact of war that some men go missing. And that's worse, actually, than getting the telegram that says, you know, your son or daughter or father have, fallen in the service of the country. Because it leaves this aching feeling of not knowing what happened. And so I think it's very important to try to resolve that issue.
How many aircraft would be assigned, for instance, to your group?
Well, a group normally, a normal group consisted of 3 fighter squadrons. We were the biggest fighter squadron in the whole United States Air Force.
And the 332nd, the 100th 301, 302 came over in January of 44. And then the 99th joined them in June of 44 and became the 4th Squadron, 332nd, better known as Red Tails. So that some of those men in the 66 actually were killed in training. Some were killed in North Africa, in Italy. But most of them were killed on missions with the 332nd, where they either got lost in the weather or had an accident taken off, or got shot down, or any aircraft.
Who were the 4 members of your class that were fallen? Do you remember those?
Fred Brewer, Elton Nightingale, Roosevelt Steiger, Al Young, and I think there was one other.
Any precious memories of those?
Well, I have great memories of all of them because one of the things about the training, it's a bonding event. When you look at them, you see just how vibrant and young and courageous they were. And so just by bringing that out, it helps you realize that the cost of war is some human suffering, both for those who remain, but mainly for those and their families who were lost.
Soldiers who knew no fear, men who would defend even unto death the land of their birth.
Since World War II, to try to identify as many of the missing as possible in terms of the efforts of the country. 22 years old kids who went out and became heroes and helped save the country from a very horrible fate. That anybody can be a hero. Anybody who's part of this culture of ours can help make it better.
Even a filmmaker?
Even a filmmaker.
Even a filmmaker.
But it's part of it just to say this is part of your history. This is part. These guys went out and did extraordinary things, and again, it's that story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's what a real hero is.
Some were killed in North Africa, in Italy, but most of them were killed on missions with the 332nd.
On the Berlin mission, we lost 5 guys did not come back from that mission. One, Captain Armour McDaniels, was shot down over Berlin by an ME-262. 2 others, Leon Spears and Mitchell, James Mitchell. I think Spears had engine problems, and Mitchell escorted him behind. We were told if you had any problems to go land behind the Russian lines if you're up near Berlin, because they were right there. Spears, my understanding, the story I got, that they crash landed on an open field over which the Germans and the Russians were engaged in combat. He was captured by the Germans. He was liberated 3 days later by the Russians. Mitchell landed his plane at a Russian field, and they were joined after the Russians got Spears. Now, Reeves and Robinson were heard on the radio to Rimini Tower in northern Italy to say, there's a field, let's go have a look. That's the last contact that was had with them, and to my knowledge, no trace was ever found of either plane or either man.
Although I did communicate with some of the widows who wanted to know the circumstances, because I've known some of the missions where some of the people were killed. They wanted to know the circumstances, and I told them what I knew. I saw the plane go down, saw it crash, but I didn't know exactly where, because they were trying to locate the remains and where they might have been buried.
I only had 18 and 1/2.
And what happened on that half?
That's that half where I got blown away, strafing radar stations on the coast of southern France, right outside the city of Toulon. Our job was to knock out radar stations because the invasion of southern France came off 3 days later. Now, we didn't know what the heck radar was at the time. All that we were told, some log towers with some buildings, use your 50 calibers and go ahead and shoot them up and destroy them. First flight got through. The whole side of the coastline, this rocky coast, lit up with little red specks, firing it back at it. course, the radio's on live. Everybody's cussing. Hey, what's going on? First 4 guys got through. Second 4 guys got through. Third 4 guys got through. I go right across the top of the target, treetop height. And something, boom. I look up and there's a hole in it, right in the canopy. And fire came up out of the floor. Now, of course, I've got gloves. I'm wearing an oxygen mask, helmet. And I said, pull back on the stick to get some altitude because I had to get out. And as I went up, you reach up, you pull a little red knob, and the canopy goes off. With your left hand, you got a little wheel down here, and you rack that wheel, and like cruise control, you rack it forward, and the nose goes down. Well, I pull that sucker up anyway. I think I got about 800 feet, I don't know. But it got hot. Turn the stick loose, and when I turned the stick loose, the nose popped. And when the nose popped like that, I had straps here with a big buckle. I hit that buckle, and bing, they came loose. I'm sitting on the parachute. When the nose popped, I came out. I remember the tail going by with all that fire, and I'm looking down. I'm looking at the darn trees. I see the suckers. I said, "Oh hell!" Pull that D-ring. See, normally you say 1, 2, 3, then you pull a D-ring. But heck, I'm looking at the trees, and I said, "Oh hell!" I pull the sucker anyway. I'm looking at the son of a gun. And I said, "Oh hell!" And that's like, bang! The parachute popped. I'm in the trees. They tell us that you take your parachute and dig a hole and hide the parachute and get with the French marquee. But hell, I'm in the trees, I'm coming out, and I'm unlocking. I get bruises, no broken bones. And all of a hear, Ach so, ja, Leutnant. I said, oh hell, a German soldier was still 50 feet away. I had no chance to getting away. That was right outside the city of Toulon, southern France.
Nancy Lieutenant Collon.
Right.
Is that it?
That's it, yes.
Your brother, Samuel.
Yes.
Tuskegee Airman, combat training. He had left Tuskegee, left combat training, yeah. I assume, and was assigned overseas.
Right, to Italy.
Okay. And how long did he fight over there? Do you have any idea?
I would say he went over that fall. That would be the fall of 44.
Mm-hmm.
And his incident occurred April 12, 45.
So you were in the military then as a nurse?
Oh, yes. We're assigned to Fort Devens in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Right.
36, we were the first black nurses that weren't sent to Fort Huachuca, where the nurses that were there that were black were assigned to take care of the black soldiers and the POWs.
You were getting news back where you were about the war and about, did you get news about fallen soldiers, fallen airmen then?
No. Well, I'm wishing that, I wish I had known him. Wish I had known him. Because they were very special men.
Samuel Gordon, lieutenant, was second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Corps, killed in action in 1945. He was a 20-year-old committed to serving his nation, committed to protecting his family, and was willing to sacrifice it all. And he did indeed sacrifice it all. He was a Tuskegee Airman. He was killed on his third mission, accompanying bombers into Germany from their base in Ramitelli, Italy, and was lost in action. And Tuskegee Airmen were very consequential because when they started accompanying bombing runs, and it's so important to recognize the Red Tails, as they're referred to, the Tuskegee Airmen. They led the way in aviation in general and for African Americans in service to our nation.
On the day that Captain Lawrence Dixon crashed, he and his wingman had been assigned to escort a P-38 photo reconnaissance plane that flew over Prague, Czechoslovakia. They were returning from Prague when Captain Dixon developed engine trouble.
The project that we're doing here is the result of a collaboration between the University of New Orleans, the University of Innsbruck, the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, and the DPAA. We're currently investigating the site that we believe to be the location of Captain Lawrence Dixon. The crash site was lost, his remains were never recovered after the war, but as the result of some research by the DPAA, this really appears to be that location. So we're now doing excavations in the hope that we can recover something that we can definitively link to Captain Dixon and thus kind of close the case on what happened to him at the end of the war. We're currently excavating the crash site itself. After surveying the area, we think that's the most likely location that any human remains would be located. So we're taking a cross-section, a bisection of the crash site to look at essentially what happened to it over time. And we're hoping to recover something from within that we can definitively link to this one particular crash.
To have this excavation be my first one, since we're looking for this pilot and looking for his P-51, it's amazing just working tangibly with the history from my own country. It really puts things in perspective for me. It's also been an honor working with the Innsbruck students as well. We have a lot to learn from them. They have an amazing institute in Innsbruck, so we've definitely learned a lot of skills from them. And then from being in Austria, it just shows how far we've progressed in history, and that nationalities can be put aside at this point in time to look for a U.S. pilot.
An Eyewitness News exclusive. Investigators have identified the remains of a Tuskegee airman from Harlem killed in action more than 74 years ago. Eyewitness News reporter Lucy Yang met today with the daughter of Captain Lawrence Dixon and shares her emotional story.
74 and a half.
Marla Andrews waited a lifetime, 74 and a half long years to be exact, to bury the father she always loved but never knew.
I wanted him to be proud of me and the legacy we have together.
Marla's middle name is Lawrence Dixon. Her father's name, Captain Lawrence Dixon, was a pilot with the Tuskegee Airmen, the brave soldiers who were willing to sacrifice all for their country but couldn't fly with the rest of the pilots because they were black. On Friday, DNA confirmed they had found Captain Dixon's remains and part of his plane exactly where it crashed in World War II.
It's proof to my children and hopefully my grandchildren one day that as a community and as a culture, we contribute just as much as anybody else.
It was Captain Dixon's 68th mission. He was supposed to go to Prague for recon. Instead, his one-man plane went down in Austria on December 23rd, 1944. Marla's mother received this MIA notice saying the 24-year-old pilot may have crashed in Italy. Eventually, his file became KIA.
I think they closed down the whole case in 1948.
Marla was a tender 15 months old when he died, too young to have any personal memories to fill the hole in her life. But this she does know from his photos. Lawrence, who grew up in Harlem, was tall and handsome.
Oh, you talk about a movie star. He was sharp.
He was also smart and brave and a war hero. Marla would like her father to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
nephew, would you say, of George McCrumpy. I am a history teacher here at Sarah High School. The opportunity to bring history to life is one element that intrigues me about being able to potentially bring home or recover my uncle's remains and bring them back to the family. I think from an educational standpoint, though, it's important for our young people to see the effects of what not only my uncle did, but all of the fall of '66 and the Tuskegee Airmen, the impact they had in World War II, but not even necessarily just in the war, but the impact they had throughout the United States, and how they changed the perception of African Americans in general. At one point they weren't thought to be smart enough or skilled enough to fly planes. And every challenge that was brought to them, they tackled and attacked it and mastered it. And just kind of being able to maybe potentially dialogue some of this stuff and show my students down the line, I think it really brings history to life for them. And I think that's one of the struggles that they have with this class, is that they're so far removed from everything that has happened that they're learning about. And so for them to have an opportunity now to kind of see it play out in someone who's close to their lives, I think really would have a tremendous impact on their perspective and perceptions on the course.
Well, one of the things that happened at the event in Vegas is that they gave all the information that they had, but in the case of the Tuskegee Airmen, many of them, a lot of their records were lost. It was we expedite things. That's awesome. Okay, that's awesome. Okay,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure finally get to meet, and this is truly a blessing. Thank you very much.
Well, we're doing here memorializing Walter Manning. And it was nearly this date, 73 years ago, that we were on a fighter sweep in this area of the country here, and that's when Walter got shot down, and later on, about 3 days later, met his demise at the being captured by a mob and executed at the time. Name is Harry Stewart, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force, retired. I met Lieutenant Manning sometime before that, maybe a year and a half before that. We both went in the service together, and we went to the same field where we trained at. I joined up with him in the same squadron when I went overseas, and joined him in the 301st Fighter Squadron in Ramitelli, Italy at the time. Manning was quite a guy, you know, and he wanted to fly very, very badly. He wanted to get his pilot's wings and do his duty for his country, and I guess he did all he wanted to do as far as the flying was concerned. That was what he was chiefly after. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. Well, it certainly means a great deal to me, being, you know, one of the 6 pilots who flew along with him when he met his demise. But the other thing is that the people of the United States know nothing about what actually happened to Walter Manning. And I'm hoping with all of this that we can take the story back to the United States and let the people know what had happened to him.
Company!
the biggest thing was the extent that the government had gone to memorialize the memory of Walter Manning, but also the display, the pageantry that they put on at the time there was just beyond any expectations that I had. And now the memorial that we see that stands over to the side of us is quite a tribute to the memory of Manning. Today we turn out to be allies, and quite comfortable allies. I think that he would be very forgiving and of the demise that he had, and I think that he would be very pleased with the memorial that had been named in his honor.
The final resting place for a piece of American history. But getting to it requires a 30-foot dive. Lake Huron holds the wreckage of a plane piloted by 2nd Lieutenant Frank Moody, a member of the famed Tuskegee Airmen, the nation's first black military pilots. Moody's body washed ashore a few months after his P-39 crashed into the Great Lake during a training exercise in 1944. Now, 70 years later, the first archaeological exploration, a year after its discovery.
I mean, I literally underwater, I got tears in my eyes. To see the star, to see what it represented, see that it being in its final resting place was extremely emotional.
Jay Hagler came to help document the wreckage. He's a member of Diving with a Purpose, a nonprofit that works to conserve and protect maritime history, with an emphasis on African American contributions. 4 other DWP members joined him on the trip.
I think it's really important to map the Tuskegee Airmen wreck here, not only to document the actual wreck, but also to tell the history of the Tuskegee Airmen.
A history of sacrifice and trailblazing that these divers, including a doctor, a NASA engineer, and a teacher, say allowed them to pursue their dreams.
Frank Moody is a great African American that inspired me significantly.
The dive team paused to hold a memorial service.
Lieutenant Moody and all the Tuskegee Airmen are truly American heroes, especially to me. And I would just like to say today we like to honor them and I'd like to salute them.
Paying their respects to a fallen 22-year-old they never met, but who impacted their lives. Mike Householder, Associated Press.
Why keep searching? The answer's simple. You never leave a fallen American behind. The mission of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA, is to provide the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel to their families and their nation. Strategically located in Arlington, Virginia, with major facilities at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, Hawaii, and Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska, the more than 600-person newly established defense agency is jointly manned by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Department of Defense civilians with specialized skills. Researching, recovering, identifying, and ultimately returning an individual to their family begins with analysis and investigation. The DPAA experts begin the search by studying all known information regarding the circumstances of each loss. Historians and analysts gather information from U.S. veterans, foreign witnesses, archival records, and other sources. They then create a case file for each unaccounted for American. This file may include historical records, official correspondence, maps, photographs, daily activity logs, and medical and personnel records of the missing person. These files are continually updated until an identification is made.
Well, the research is done here. Once we have enough research, we get approval from our leadership, either to do a small two-person team investigation, which we call our research investigation team, where they just basically go on either canvas villages or conduct interviews in smaller towns or cities to just gather enough information that would warrant us to do field operations.
Once all available information is analyzed, a decision can be made to disinter individuals buried as unknown or conduct field investigations. During a typical investigation mission, personnel interview potential witnesses, conduct on-site reconnaissance, and survey terrain for safety and logistical concerns. Teams also try to generate new leads that may result in future recoveries. The main goal of the investigation is to obtain enough information to correlate or connect a particular site with one or more missing Americans. If enough on-site evidence is found, the site will be recommended for recovery and excavation. Recovery sites range in size from a few square meters, such as in individual burials, to areas larger than football fields for aircraft crashes. DPAA may hire as many as 100 local workers to help with the excavation process.
As we're doing excavation, we want to be able to control all of the aspects of that excavation. One of the things with archaeology and excavation is you only get one chance. It's a destructive process, and so we need to make sure that we do it the right way, especially for cases like this where it's forensic archaeology and these remains need to be properly handled for the families. For me, this job as my primary occupation is very important because I'm able to bring home these service members to families that have been waiting for 70 years. And that's really an amazing feeling to be able to give something to a family that they never thought that they would even be able to have.
You know, if I could, I'd stay out here indefinitely until I could find them. And unfortunately, that's not possible. I just can't do that. But you know, if the opportunity arose where I was able to volunteer to come back out here, I would. And there's 100 different stories of where these guys might be, but the reality is that we'll continue to come out here and scour the earth for the remains.
After a successful recovery, all evidence is then transported to the DPAA laboratories. Once they've arrived in the lab, the painstaking process of identification begins. This is the final step of the mission, leading to the return of an individual. In many of the cases, an important step in the identification process is DNA analysis, which is accomplished by cutting a bone sample that is sent to the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory for sequencing. One of the challenges DPAA faces today is the lack of reference samples from family members of those still unaccounted for. Any person who is a relative of an unaccounted for American is encouraged to contact their service casualty office to ensure there is a DNA reference sample on file for that service member. DPAA makes an identification when all available evidence, remains, artifacts, and historical documents point to the same person. The ID process can take anywhere from a few months to several years to complete. Any unresolved cases are kept open with the hope that new evidence will be found, or new technologies will be developed to make a future identification possible.
Tell me, weary soldier, from the rude and stirring wars, was my brother in the battle where you gained those noble scars? He was ever brave and valiant, and I know he never fled. Was his name among the wounded or numbered with the dead? Was my brother in the battle when the tide of war ran high? You would by his dark and flashing eyes. Tell me, weary soldier, will he never come again? Did he suffer with the wounded or die among the slain? Was my brother in the battle when the noble Highland hosts were so wrongfully outnumbered on the Carolina coast? Did he struggle for the Union mid the thunder and the rain till he fell among the brave on the bleak Virginia plain? I'm sure that he was dauntless and his courage ne'er would lag by contending for the honor of our dear and cherished flag. Tell me, weary soldier, will he never come again? Did he suffer with the wounded or die among the slain? Was my brother in the battle when the flag of Erin came to the rescue of our banner and protection of our fame? While the fleet from off the waters poured out terror and dismay, till the bold and erring foe fell like leaves on autumn day. When the bugle called to battle and the cannon deeply roared, oh, I wish I could have seen him draw his sharp and glittering sword. Tell me, weary soldier, will he never come again? Did he suffer, meet the wounded, or die